Alright, so took a small break from working on the EV, the GTM. That's the car I'm doing a Tesla drive unit in a factory 5 GTM chassis. Just a quick overview, it's got some volt batteries, it's got a 400 kilowatt Tesla drive unit in the back, custom motor mounts to get that to work, batteries kind of scattered throughout the place. The body is kind of hanging up there on my lift. So what I'm doing today is going to install these Eibach sway bars into my Model 3 Performance. So I've already started, pretty basic. I've got the just the back shield removed. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 8. 9 total 10mm bolts, and then 2 these larger holes back on the back are 15mm nuts. So all of those are right there, and like I said, I've already dropped that. Pretty straightforward. Let me just preface real quick, the vehicle's already been lowered on Eibach, their Pro Kit springs, which was 1 inch in the front and 1.4 inches in the rear. In my opinion, it gives it a perfect rake, or actually no rake, it's perfectly level. And it rides just, I mean, really like stock. A lot of people don't like lower end springs because they, supposedly cause the shocks to wear out fast and, stuff like that. I've never had a problem with it so long as you're not lowering it excessively. If you're lowering it excessively, then you want something like this guy has, with an adjustable coilover shock, adjustable shocks themselves, height level, that sort of thing. But this is my daily driver, and just wanted to improve the handling, a little bit less body roll, so I think this is the easy, economical way to go. And so next steps, kind of show you, there's enough light down here. Real quick, I'm just doing these on your standard ramps. Seem to have no problem with the weight of the car. They're rated for far more than this thing weighs. And again, my lift is kind of tied up, so ramps seem to be just fine. And I think there's going to be plenty of room to do this all underneath here. Before I get any deeper here, just wanted to go over the tools that I used to do this work. Everything you see here is exactly what I used to install the sway bars. The front, so this shield here has to come out as well, just to get to the bolts for the front sway bar. Show you where the rest are. So you can see the lower portion of the drive unit there. If you look straight up here, you've got the sway bar mounting bracket. There's 1, 2, obviously those have bushings in them. The new sway bar will go in those same brackets, and then this bolt right there that attaches the sway bar end link to the sway bar itself, nut rather, and then the same on that side. So I think this is gonna be a pretty easy deal to do just on the ground, just like it is. No need to get anything crazy, jack stands or anything like that. And again, there's obviously the box with the front and rear sway bar in it. So real quick, down here you can see these little triangular shaped things. These are something that I 3D printed to keep the lip from getting scratched up. Honestly, even with this car lowered, very rarely do I don't actually know if it's really even bottomed out anything. You see these things are all in really good shape, as is the majority of this deflector here. But what I'm showing you here is, so you've got these silly little things, the push pin type clips, and if you look at these real close, there's a little indentation on the back, straight edge screwdriver, twist, and pry a little bit. They do make a tool specifically for this, but I'm not too worried about it. These things are pretty easy most of the time. And then the little clip fell down there in the ground, and then what's remaining that'll just get pried out with the screwdriver as well. So there's a couple of those all the way across. They don't always pop out completely. Sometimes they stick in there like that. And again, just a couple more to remove. The back side of this had the 10 millimeter bolts that the front shared, or I'm sorry, that the engine undercover shared. Okay, so looking inside the fender well here, there is this splash shield, fender liner, and then this guy down here is part of the under shield that we need to remove. So it's actually a little bit of damage there. I don't remember seeing that or that happening, but oh well, it's a car. So back in there are two of the little push pins. So they need to be, you know, the center is pulled out. Those actually attach to the under shield itself. And then there's these two here. These need to be removed not because they attach to the under shield, but because right behind here is a 10 millimeter nut that holds this guy in place. So instead of having to like take the wheel off, access it some crazy way, we're just gonna loosen these two and then stick a 10 millimeter ratchet in there. I'll be using a Milwaukee 12 volt ratchet to go back in there to get rid of those. Okay, now see you've got this flap opens up like so. A normal hand ratchet wrench would probably work also, but I like to make things easy, so I'm just going to stick that guy in there. Get it lined up on the nut so the nut's right here. And there we go. Pops out just like so. So here's the underbody shield. I find it interesting. So this is this car was delivered in September of 18. Pretty sure that's where the speaker goes, the pedestrian warning speaker on the newer ones. So interesting that it's a spot for it, but it's not actually there. And then there's the attachment where the nut goes inside the fender liner. That's kind of blind. No way to get to it. Alright, so under the car, we've got the two shields removed. We've got the sway bar end link there. We've got the sway bar bushing and clamp there and over there. So we're just going to remove all these bolts, nuts rather, it looks like, all the way around, and get this guy out of here. Okay, so I've got an 18 millimeter wrench on the nut that's on the sway bar end link. So this is a ball joint right here. That guy. So basically what happens a lot of times is once you start to loosen this, the ball joint starts spinning on the back side. Oh, wrench is out of the way. You can probably see it's got a Torx bit there. I don't know what size it is, probably T35 or something like that. I'll find out here in a minute if this ends up needing a bit in there to hold it in place while I loosen this. So as I expected, the center is rotating with that, so I'm going to go grab the Torx bits to hold that in place. Okay, so turns out I was right. It does need a Torx bit to hold that center in place. In this case, it's a T40 is the size of this guy. So that slides right into the center, and then between the wrench and the ratchet I'm going to use will hold the middle in place and rotate the other. Make sure we have this loosen. So that goes right in the center, and then, oh, it's actually opposite on this. Alright, so our nut's off, our sway bar end link comes out, and then we're just going to repeat the same on this side. Let's have a lower profile. The center is also not spinning on this side, which is great. Oh, spoke too soon. I have a tool that I could use for this. It's like a low profile ratchet, but it looks like I don't need it. Alright, so one thing, just a quick benefit of doing this on the suspension on its weight is nothing's bound up here. This is the way the sway bar is designed. This is the way it's going to be most of the time when it's out there moving up, around, up and down, and makes it really easy to just slide these out, versus if you had this on a jack. If the suspension was like, you'd have to jack up the entire front or entire rear in order to do this. So this makes things a little easier, I think. Alright, so moving on, got these two bolts here, nuts rather. They're 15 millimeter, so same size as the nuts that hold the back splash shield on the car. So I'm just going to remove those. Okay, so I'm just going to leave one nut holding that just for right now. It's barely on there, so I can do the other side. Okay, so just gonna unscrew this guy by hand, and then the other side, and sway bar is out. Factory Tesla sway bar for the front, pretty straightforward. And that guy's going in next. Okay, so comparison. We've got the Eibach sway bar here, obviously red, factory bar, difference in diameter. I'll try and post that in the comments section below, but the Eibach is noticeably thicker than the factory one. The Eibach also has 3 adjustments, right? So the way this works is the hole closest to the center point basically has less torque whenever things are moving, right? So this is just a fulcrum, less torque to twist that, so it makes it stiffer. Whereas out here, there's less torque at this length required to actually twist. So, daily driver, street car, knowing what I know about the way the car handles, my preference, where I'm going to start. Now, obviously this is relatively easily adjustable. None of the shields even have to come off to adjust this and at a future date. So I'm going to start it in the center on the front, and I'm going to put it on the stiffest setting on the rear. That should increase the car's willingness to rotate, meaning the rear end would be more likely to step out or get loose, turn that oversteer, whereas if the front was stiffer and the rear wasn't as stiff, then the front would be more likely to push or understeer, right? So lots of lessons to be learned if you don't know anything about understeer or oversteer, but that's the reason I'm choosing the way I am. So it comes with new bushings, solid polyurethane, looks to be some sort of part number there, maybe UB0524. They do have a slit in them, so this is just going to clamp around there. The factory brackets will be retained, and then some lubrication used to put in here. It keeps it from being squeaky. If you look closely, that there are some grooves cut inside there. Those grooves will hold some of this lubrication so that it doesn't get squeaky over time. My experience is that these things do need to be re-lubricated every couple years or so. The Teslas in general, they say to lubricate the brakes every year, so I think what I'm going to do is just every time I lubricate the brakes, take this apart. It's just a couple bolts to get the splash pans out and lubricate these as well. So next I'm going just to swap these over. Okay, so new brackets and bushings are on the Eibach sway bar. The factory bushings just stayed on the sway bar, I don't care about it. One little thing, I was able to pry these guys off just with pushing down, but there are these little nubs that stick out on either side of the bushing that go into these little slots that are on the bracket. So easy enough. Again, I did it without using any tools or anything, but just so you know to expect it. All right, so now this whole thing is going to go right back in the car, just the exact opposite of the old one coming out. One last thing, just orientation wise, so this is the direction it goes back in the car. So the ends are going to be pointing kind of cupped upwards, and these little holes are for mounting brackets for the underbody shields. So just know that that's the direction it goes. Okay, so those are just on there. I just threaded them on just a little bit by hand. I'm going to go ahead and put the sway bar end links in their spot. Remember, I'm using the middle on the front up here. Remember, if you're screwing in the center part, it's actually backwards. So if you're just doing the nut, it was righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but this time we're actually screwing the center part, which is the ball joint technically, so it's backwards. Okay, so snap that guy down. Okay, the other side. Once it's mostly snug, then you don't need the center, you just put a wrench on here and tighten that guy down. I don't know the torque specs, but honestly I've done so much suspension work, I have a pretty good feel for what's accurate. And then just got these guys. There we go. That's all done. We'll stop the okay, so there we go. That's all done. Gonna clean up some of this silicone lubricant that oozed out on both sides, and then button up all these under panels, and then move to the back to do the rear. Okay, so just starting to put things back together here. I've got one nut in for this, and that's that one that's in the corner way over there. So I just kind of put that on, just threaded on a few turns by hand. I'm going to put all the plastic push pins in the rest of this, the nut on the other side, and then I'll tighten those both down. So I just wanted to point out one quick thing. These are the two different types of plastic fasteners that Tesla uses, and it's real easy to keep them straight here at least. This is the type that goes under the car. This is the type that goes in the fender liners. I mean, really super simple. If you break any, you know, you can order these online. You can get them from Tesla, all sorts of different options. But yeah, just showing you the difference. So talked about that one little nut that's back here. Here's the one for the other side, just a little 10mm nut. So this one's already threaded on there, but I need to tighten it down, obviously. All the push pins are in for this lower portion. Going to, well, I've already got the nut in there, so just kind of thread it down my finger. That's good. Get the ratchet to tighten. And just snug. So we're good there. And we've got 4 last push pins on this side. Go. Just want to make sure it gets into this undercover. All right, so this side's done. So there is one little 10mm that goes right in here. And the rest are along the perimeter. So there's 4 in the front and 4 in the rear. Okay, so everything's back to the way it was before, minus this red sway bar sticking out. Okay, so now we'll just get it off the drive-on ramps, and we're gonna do the rear. Okay, so got the ramps off the front, from under the front, and they're under the rear now. Pretty straightforward. Again, just regular ramps. They're rated for like, I don't know, 5,000–6,000 pounds or something like that. It's quite a bit for plastic ramps. I've never had a problem with them. Normally I'd use the lift, but it is tied up with my other project while I do this. So this one's pretty straightforward in the rear. Come down here real quick. So we've got a rear panel, doesn't need to come off for this one. Front panel, the sway bar is completely up above it. You can actually see the sway bar kind of poking out, which is that guy right there. So same as the front, got a bunch of 10mm bolts. We'll get those out of the way and then see where we're at. So I wasn't keeping count, but there looks like there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 or so bolts for the rear. And then easy access to the rear sway bar there, sway bar end link there, and then same on the other side. So the rear is going to be even easier than the front. Well, it's not 10, it's not 12. It's going to be 11mm, I'm guessing. It's a weird size. Yep, 11 it is. Sway bar end link is going to be 15mm, so we're going to start with that. So the front was a Torx bit. These are hex. Allen wrench, that is. Weird setup. Why would they be different? New auto manufacturer, I'm guessing, is it. While I'm wrenching on this, feast your eyes on that. That is an oil filter for the rear drive unit. No longer get to say there's no oil filters on Teslas. That side did not require me to use an Allen key. 15mm. Could have used my ratchet, or my electric ratchet on this. Okay, so both those are free. I'll go back to our trusty 11. And we're free. Okay, so factory rear sway bar, bushings, all that good stuff right there. This is the way it comes out of the car. So you want to be careful, make sure we put the other one back in the same way. Okay, so got the Eibach rear bar unboxed. Same as the front, nice and red. So the rears here only have 2 adjustment holes. Stiffer and less stiff, essentially. Again, as I mentioned in the first part, I will be running the stiffer setting, so it's going to be this forward one versus the softer setting. With the 3 adjustment points in the front and 2 in the rear, I think that leads a total of 6 different possibilities or combinations. One nice thing, didn't realize this until literally just now, Eibach includes nice aluminum rear brackets for the rear kit. I'm assuming it has something to do with the diameter of the bushing maybe not working or being compatible with the factory bushing. I'm not sure why, but it is a nice addition that it is included. Especially means one less thing to ever have to upgrade if you choose to go that route. Same thing is going to happen back here as up front. Tube of silicone, split the difference between the two, put these on the red bar goes in, black bar gets tossed. So real simple. Actually, the rears are easier because it's a smaller diameter bar, but they're on, they're ready to go, and next steps are underneath the car again. Okay, so I got one bolt in this side, and then something I just want to point out is this sway bar is underneath here. So before I do the other side, I need to rotate this and go above that. And then the same thing is going to happen on the opposite side before I put the bracket in. And again, I'm just kind of temporarily mounting it with just one bolt just to hold it in place. Okay, so one bolt on either side, like so. Okay, so all 4 bolts are in place. Not tight, real loose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sway bar end links on first on both sides and then tighten these brackets down. So again, doing the, in this case, the forward one, so the hole that's closest to the fulcrum, which is going to be that pivot point there, will be the stiffest. Now, as I'm tightening this, I'm looking for that center to turn with the nut, and it's not, which means this is actually tightening. Maybe the first sway bar end link I've ever done like this. It's allowed me to take it off without holding the center, which is crazy. I will make a list, though, of that tool size also. Alright, so got our sway bar installed completely. Now just a matter of putting that shield back up and good to go. It's been a few days now since I installed the sway bars on the car. Everything's great and quiet, no weird squeaks, rattles, groans, anything like that. Car handles amazing. It does feel to be a little bit more balanced, meaning that the rear is just a little bit more likely to step out a little bit if you really push it. That's exactly what I was going for. I felt like the car pushed a little bit in corners, especially tight corners. This kind of evens that out a little bit. As far as ride quality, most roads don't notice any difference whatsoever. However, on some of the rougher roads, and specifically the roads that are uneven, they do tend to transmit just a little bit more into the cabin, but nothing that I see as a concern whatsoever. Overall, this is great upgrade, less body roll, does seem to handle just that little bit extra around the tight turns, and I will in the future hopefully have a little bit more experience with a little bit faster, higher speed turns as well. Just don't right this second. But again, overall, well worth the money spent. Perfectly happy with the Eibach brand. I've used them for the lowering springs, for the sway bars on this car, and I've used them many times previously as well. Other good brands out there, obviously. Price and availability will vary, so just kind of check those out. As always, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it helps you in your endeavors to do this. I should point out that Eibach does include some instructions. They're not the greatest, just very basic. So hopefully being able to see this prior to beginning if you like the video, then subscribe, share, and then come back and check on my other project, my electric GTM that does have a Tesla drive unit as well. And that's all for now.